Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in. Hey, Mark. How are you doing this
Hello again,
week?
Zena. I'm
I know.
good. I'm good. It's, another day in paradise over here in Vancouver. Although it's not sunny, it was sunny this morning early, but yeah, it's just glorious. Like every day that I can, I jump on my bicycle and ride around the city, and it's the best.
It's a
This is
good
this,
city. It's a really
yeah,
nice city. I mean,
yeah.
honestly, for people who haven't been to Vancouver, it's really a lovely city.
I
So,
know.
yeah,
Literally, I just like I'm biking like across the Cambridge Street Bridge, and I'm just like I can see the mountains and downtown and the
the
water and the
water
science
and
world, and
all.
oh
I
my God.
know, and it's got great public transit. It's bikeable, it's walkable. Um, yeah, it's a pretty great place. Good
Yeah,
park and like
yeah, the whole
anyway,
place. It's
okay.
great.
Tours in Vancouver. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Anyway, if you've got a great city, let us know. Happy to shout that out too. Um,
Exactly.
I have to say I'm in Tacoma, Washington, just to give a little city shout out, and I'm really liking it here. It's a nice place. Had no idea when we moved here a few years ago, but we seem to have found a little gem. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
a great
still in the
place.
Pacific Northwest, so we get all the benefits of
Totally.
living out here. Easy winters and
Yeah.
natural beauty.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, well, this week we are talking with Bill Mikita, so
Yeah.
that's fun. He's a writer, so it was neat to have his
Yeah.
perspective there. We don't get to talk to a lot of writers, so
Yeah, and I really, really enjoyed hearing from him as well, and the struggles and the ups and the downs. I mean, wow, what a time to be a writer in Hollywood. That's for sure.
hmm
And no, but good stories still. Everybody wants a good story, so and that's something that he's been really great at, especially in the sports realm, right?
yeah,
Where so feel good stories of underdog and accomplishment and so on. So
hmm
yeah, it's a great interview, and also dovetails in with the Green Sports Alliance as well
hmm
coming up. So that's kind of good timing.
yes.
And that's coming up in Miami, right?
Yeah, June 10 to 12.
Yeah.
I've got a session there and we're focused on the broadcast perspective in our session. And so we're hearing from some veterans, if you will. I mean, folks that have been in the broadcast industry for a while on the behind the scenes operations side, both from a studio experience and then also game side experience. So when
Hmm.
you see on TV, the pre games and the big, the stages and, the commentators and this and, ahead of like the actual game, that is more studio side. That's put together. That's, all planned. It's separate than the game day broadcast
Yeah.
at the venue or whatever. So so those are two different crews, two different teams, that sort of thing. So we're gonna unpack that a bit, and I'm excited about it because
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of
So
people.
exciting.
Yeah.
I would be there. I would be there if I could be, but I cannot.
hmm
I don't know if we chatted already, but I think that she said the Show Power guys are going to be there. Um,
Yes.
so some of
Paul's
our
going to be
friends there.
there. Some of
Yeah.
our friends, AY Young's going to be there. I mean, I know several people
Nice.
who are going. So it'll be nice to catch up with folks. And, everybody loves sports. So it's always a positive environment, and sustainability
Yeah.
in sports. It's exciting. People like,
Totally.
talking about their
And that's
stuff and doing good and all of that.
and also, I mean, that's interesting. Paul's gonna step away from the Coldplay tour.
Oh, he's in the middle of it right now.
Take it right now. Well, they started in May, May 29th, I believe. But yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
We should definitely follow up with Paul, like a behind the scenes update on
Hmm.
the midway through the Coldplay tour to see how Show
Yeah.
Power's doing.
For sure. For sure. See how they're doing. I'll have to check the schedule.
Mhm.
I don't know that I saw them coming close to me, but if they do, maybe I can hop over there and see
Yeah,
what they're up to. So,
that's great. And also
yeah.
speaking of writing, you have a new article out on
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, you'll love my little title here. It's called Integration is the Innovation. Why
Wow, you're
sustainability must be
such a
embedded.
nerd.
I can't help it. I can't help it. It's like, the things you observe over the years, and you're like, I talk about it a lot, but then I'm like, has this been written? Do you have to write
I
it
don't
for it
know.
to be real? That kind of thing. So I wrote a little piece on that, because I think that when a lot of times we talk about sustainability, it's like, kind of an other kind of thing. And, in all the things we teach and all the courses and whatnot, we talk about integration and I just thought I'd pull it all together in one piece. I mean, it's just, it's not a very long article,
Mhm.
but try to make some, pretty direct points related to it. So,
What
um,
what's the challenge or the problem is that sustainability isn't integrated fully into the planning, the process. Like what's the sort of the hang up here that has led you to developing this thesis or this
well,
or this action item manifesto?
yeah, right. Um, Well, I think it's a couple. Some folks do it really well when the leadership is engaged and kind of makes it part of the conversation. That's where it's kind of more integrated in. You can feel it. The whole crew can feel it. When you've got a sustainability rep, they're called many things, so I'll just use that generic term. Running around like, focused on waste or focused on, water bottles or whatever. It doesn't encapsulate the full like effort of sustainability because you need folks from transportation weighing in and grip and electric and costumes, all the departments like chiming in, doing their stuff, tracking their stuff, making decisions for their department. And that's when it's a full team effort, right? And so I
Yeah.
find that there tends to be a lot of reinvention. We need another checklist, or this checklist needs to be specific for us. And I'm like, you're not that special. All these actions are very
Yeah.
transferable. And so folks will tend to like redo another checklist. So they've got their own thing. And I think that's fine. But I do believe that checklists are tools that one can use. But what I'm asking folks to do is think.
Yeah.
Folks want, a checklist to like tell me what to do. Well, what I'm asking you to do is think. Think about your
And
work and think
bake it
about
in.
how to bake it in, how to integrate it,
Yeah.
right? And that's, I think, where the real magic happens. And that's where I think the transformation is going to happen. And that's kind of what I was talking about in this piece.
Right.
So
But I mean, I think doesn't integration naturally happen over time? Like, I mean,
it takes,
you know,
yeah.
but I mean, it's still after 10 years or more, it's still not, right? So what's the rub then? Like what is holding this back from truly being, is it just that a whole generation of new producers and filmmakers and people need to come on board and kind of have it second nature, or is there something else holding it back?
I don't know. I want to believe, just, in everything I've read and how I'm really am a nerd and I do a
Yeah.
lot of like
Yes, you are.
studying of like human behavior and psychology and all this stuff, right? And I really think that you know it comes down to mindset and people literally stepping into their power. Like once they can do
Mm,
that, then things start to like it unlocks all, you can find creative solutions. You can,
yeah.
come up with all sorts of things to do. And we have been holding ourselves back, I think, and kind of relying on the name of a position to kind of take us forward. And what I have found are the folks who do it really well are the leaders on production and in other, aspects of the industry that have really shifted their mind, really embraced it and stepped into their power and kind of starting to bring people along with them. And I think that that's what really unlocks it. And, the more we kind of keep sustainability as like, okay, we hired this person, now we're gonna make it work. Like it's that person is there to help you integrate is what I would love to get across
Yeah,
to
right,
people.
exactly. Not
They're
not not to police you or
no.
make your job harder or do whatever, right? Which is kind of like there is a bit of an adversarial kind of thing to it, right? And so that's something
Yeah.
that we just gotta we talk a lot about it on the show, but it's like,
Hmm.
at some point it just becomes you don't even have sustainability coordinators because it's literally integrated into
Yeah.
everything that we do. And I think it's starting to be in some industries and around. Um,
Hmm.
Obviously, a little bit of a setback here with everything happening around the world today, but I don't know. I still don't even think it's that much of a setback. I mean, we're not going backwards and we're not stopping. So um, I think it just
Yeah.
becomes more and more second nature over time. Um,
Yeah.
and as more awareness, comes on board to everything that we're doing. And then there's that whole generation that's just not even going to know any different. It's just going to be part of the day to day.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully. I think, it's getting, and we've said it, we've kind of danced around this. I put a little bit of this in, but talking about what we're doing just makes people believe, that they can do it. Other folks believe they can do it. They hear examples, they hear their peers doing it. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we tell stories of what we're doing behind the
Hmm.
scenes, which is kind of part of why we do this podcast as well. That's the stuff that shapes your belief that you can do it. And then you start to take on some of that. And then you start to build it within your teams. And then that's when,
Yeah,
culture starts to shift, right? And then we start to transform.
yeah,
So
yeah. And
it's
you can't
not,
force culture though. You can't, right? You
no, it's
can't
kind
just
of
like
a,
be. It has to come in. It has to be a vibration.
yeah, that's a good way to say it. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel, yeah, it's in the early days, folks, were kind of waiting on that piece of equipment, right? Well, if we
Mhm.
had this, then we
Right.
could do
Right.
it. And now we kind of we've got everything. We've got everything we
Mm.
need. It's been tested in multiple different ways. There are lots of cool examples out there. And so we don't need to wait on anything anymore.
No.
We're kind of now holding ourselves back, which is something that we can change, right?
Yeah,
So,
and this is why I still believe that rock and roll and live events and entertainment and on that side of entertainment are going to leapfrog and going to pass film.
oh,
I
I
really believe it.
mean,
Like
just the
I'm
energy
seeing
out
it
there.
every day
I'm
here.
I mean, yeah, the
And maybe
energy of
sports.
folks out there
Yeah.
in like music world, rock and roll world, whatever you want to
Hmm.
say, however you want to say it. I mean, we're
Yeah.
seeing folks on the ranch in Texas
Wow,
like
it is
doing stuff
happening.
like this, right? Like, come
Absolutely.
on.
Yep.
Like you
Yep.
you
We can
can't
do
like
this.
ignore that, right? So anyway, fun
Totally.
stuff. But yes,
Cool.
I do have a little piece. So
That's great. Yeah, check it out on LinkedIn. It's called Integration is the Innovation. Why Sustainability Must Be Embedded, Not Isolated. That's May 30th, 2025.
yeah.
All right. Well, good chat. And
Yeah.
we hope you enjoy the Bill Mikita interview and keep listening and share, link, subscribe, whatever you need to do, but spread the word.
Thanks.
Hey, Bill, welcome to the tie in. We're looking forward to speaking with you. We
Mark,
gave a
thank
little
you.
bit of an intro, but why don't you tell us from your own words a little bit about yourself and yeah, what you're passionate about and what you're working on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm a filmmaker, a screenwriter, and I got into this a little later than many people. I had a moment in my life where I had been an attorney by education and by profession, and my mother died after a short illness of a brain tumor. And she was 60 years old. I was half her age, and I thought, what if half of my life is over? What did I really want to do? I wanted to write, but I had never expressed it to anyone. And so I had a friend that worked at Disney. His name was Rick Haskins, and so I met with Rick, and he introduced me to a producer named Barry Bernardi. Got a lot of credits. And Barry told me, well, there's two ways to get into the business, Bill. There's, one, you start as a gopher and work your way up. And I thought, well, gee, I'm 30 years old. I've got a pregnant wife and two kids. I hope, I hope the second option is better. And he said, you have something that we want and we'll pay you for it. So I thought, I drove around LA the rest of the day. I thought, what do I have that no one else has? And I had this really interesting relationship with my brother growing up. I had a disabled brother who had muscular dystrophy, and he's a very dynamic person, and very successful person. Became a successful person, but I thought, I had this really good and interesting relationship with my brother. I wonder if I could write a story about us. So at the time, I just bought books about how to write a screenplay. And I wrote a very autobiographical story. And it wasn't terribly good. It was fairly crudely written, but I almost sold it as an afternoon special at the time. You two may be young and too young to remember those.
Mhm.
But it gave me the confidence to keep writing. And so I wrote two or three additional screenplays, and then I went back to my original story and I added this hook about the two brothers going to see Roberto Clemente get his 3,000th hit. And so I wrote Chasing 3000. And I met a young actor, writer friend named Kristen Nunzio, and he really liked the story. But he said, Bill, the story needs to be bigger. And at the time, I was getting feedback that the story was too small. And I learned as a novice screenwriter, what that meant that is possibly was just too intimate of a story. It didn't have broad enough appeal. And so Chris said, I think you need to raise the stakes here and make it a bigger story. So we locked ourselves in a room on Warner Brothers lot over a 4th of July weekend, and we rewrote Chasing 3000 with this road trip that the boys take from California to Pittsburgh. And so, and then I don't know if you're baseball fans, but Roberto Clemente is um, uh, a one of the greatest baseball players who ever lived. He was our hero growing up. We grew up near Pittsburgh, and he died tragically in a plane crash. He was a humanitarian. He was taking aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua, and so his tragic story kind of meshed with our story, and so we wrote the story. Chris and I rewrote it, and I still was getting. I just wasn't. It wasn't. I didn't get it sold, and I was getting a little frustrated by my lack of success. And so one day I woke up and I just told my wife, I know people with money. I'm just going to try to raise the money myself. And so I went back to I had a friend who I met. He worked at Mandalay at the time. I had written a helicopter action picture, and I say it kicked me up into like a new stratosphere of writers. And so I met bigger producers. And so I went back to Ryan Johnson and I told him that I might be able to raise this money. And so we raised about $700,000, and it was going to be at the time direct to video, like in the Blockbuster days, movie. Well, Ryan lived in Marina Del Rey near a manager who managed Ray Liotta, and we got the script to Ray Liotta, and very, very late in the process, very close to starting to film, he committed, and then the story just blew up, as they say.
Mm.
The movie did, and we were in a good way. We were able to get a great cast. We had Lauren Holly and Emmett Walsh and Seymour Cassell, the two brothers, the teenage brother who played by Rory Culkin and Trevor Morgan. And we had a great cast, and we shot the movie, and we got it released in 2010, and it was just an incredible experience. And from going from writing it to helping to produce it to raising the money and even participating in the distribution process. So I it was that those th 2 or 3 years, it was like my film school, and I
Wow.
learned a great deal on the job, and sometimes the hard way. But so that's how Chasing 3000 came about.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. It's
Amazing.
that yeah, it's so neat to hear, the various stages that you went to through at the time. And I'm curious, it's been a little while since that's come out, and I'm just wondering, like, how how have you noticed the evolution of the industry? Is it harder now or
Oh,
easier to get
that is
something
a
off the ground?
that is a really good question. I mean, because the from 2010 to today, it's like light years
Yeah.
different, right? There was no streaming, and the ch- and there the industry has changed dramatically. In fact, it
Hmm.
changes sometimes on a yearly basis,
Yeah.
and it is in some ways it's more difficult. And in some ways, there are more platforms for your project, right?
Right, right.
But it is so completely different. You've raised a good point. A lot of what I went through, has changed, and I learned from that, the experience,
Hmm.
what I did wrong, what we did wrong, and what we did right. But it
Hmm.
has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
last 4 years particularly have been difficult.
Right, right. What does that look like from your perspective, the la sort of last 4 years? How's that impacted you?
Well, it's impacted me in a negative way, almost like every writer and producer. I mean, all of my contacts, people I talk to, there's very little being done. These smaller to medium stories.
Hmm.
Now, domestically, it's just there isn't a lot being done, and it isn't easy to raise the money. So, we went through the writer's strike, well,
Right.
COVID, right? Then the
Yeah.
Yeah.
writer's strike,
Yeah.
then the actor's strike, and then
Yeah.
on a personal level, I lost my brother. My brother passed away,
Oh.
and so that was a really difficult year. And so, it's like before you know it, you lose 4 years, right? And there was nothing that was really done during those strikes. And I'm not sure how much we've rebounded since then.
Yeah.
And so I'll be honest with you. I mean, uh, I have a couple projects I'm working on, and but it's things are slow going. But
Hmm.
it's not. I don't take comfort in it. It's just that I have a lot of company. I don't know of a lot of people that are, busy on 2 or 3 projects that are, been greenlit.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, I still have to stay positive and focused on the day to day.
Yeah,
And so you've been focusing on a new screenplay,
right,
right?
right,
Called Brewer's Boys.
correct.
And so this knowing what you know about the industry today, how is this, influencing your ability to go out and present this screenplay and rally and raise awareness and investors and so on? Is this so? Are you using a new take on it from everything that you've learned in the last 4 years?
Well, yeah, because I have made Chasing 3000, I have made a film. I'm in a different position where I'm able to go in and talk to producers. I have a producing partner. Ryan Johnson is still my producing partner on my films, and he is associated with Sprockefeller films, and Sprockefeller has done quite a few movies over the last few years, and so it's the and so a lot of the pitching that we do is he'll set the groundwork for it. But it's difficult it's just as difficult today as it was 15 years ago already to get that money, to find the investors. And then, we have in the current climate of the stock market is somewhat volatile, and what's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
happen. People are a little reluctant to take a flyer on, on a in a business that if they're not already
Yeah.
investing in film, it's a little difficult pitch, to be quite
Right.
honest.
But it's interesting though, because I mean, now we're seeing a resurgence in indie films, and they're doing really well.
Right.
Some of them are doing really well, and then there's new filming techniques and new technologies that are enabling more efficient shooting.
Right.
There's again all types of new tech that are enabling multiple locations per day much faster. You don't have the same permitting and so on. Are you thinking about that as well when you're writing this and pitching this production?
Well, yes, in that we are learning by the day. And someone, I'm sorry, his name just slipped my mind. Someone just shot a movie, I think, with on their phone, basically. And so that kind of thing is happening. But we can use the other thing. The good news is there is some tax credit money available in certain states that we can if we can get the seed money, then we have an ability to shoot the movie in a state where we
Yeah.
can get some of this tax credit money. And so that money is out there in many states. That's the good news. And many more states than 15 years ago are now in the game of saying, hey, let's attract a movie production to our state. And so that also has changed to some degree.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
it's not very often we get to talk to screenwriters, so I'm happy to have this conversation with you. I'm curious from a storytelling perspective, how what your process is, how you approach that. Because I don't often get a window into that part of the process. I'm curious.
Well, that's a good question. Really, I think with any writer, it starts with a passion for a particular story, a seed of an idea that can take off. And so I think you unless you're being paid to you're being brought on to rewrite a story that's already been purchased and they want to rewrite. I think most screenwriters, I think what people write is what they feel passionate for and what they think. I've often told young writers, I mean, if you feel you have to write you know, a, a, $100 million Star Wars-esque kind of story, I mean, go ahead and write it, but don't think you're going to sell it. And so if you're going to
Right. Yeah.
spend 9 months of your life, I tell young writers, write something that you can sell. Okay. And right now, the market that's really big is horror movies.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you that market is open, and my oddly enough, my new story, Brewers Boys, is a baseball story, and so it's a feel good story. And sports stories are also people are willing to listen to our pitch because
Mhm.
that is also a genre that,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the platforms of Netflix and other platforms, I think they are looking for sports-oriented stories. And so, I usually, and I didn't mean to write, or I wasn't intending to write a second baseball story, but it just came to, it's interesting. So the idea came to me by the fact that um, uh, Chasing 3000 came out around the time of Facebook. Someone reached out to me, said, I saw your movie last night. It was great. Thank you. Send me a friend request. And then he sends me a note. He says, I have a great idea for a movie. Well, some people do, most people don't.
Yeah.
But I called him and, we chatted. And he said, I played on the greatest high school baseball team of all time. Really? Yeah. He said we won the LA Municipal Baseball League during the Watts riots,
Oh,
1965. Yeah, and the city's burning around you. Yeah, and you played a baseball game. Yeah, I'm in already, right? And so I said, well, I just out of curiosity, who was on your team? He said, well, there's Reggie Smith, Bobby Tolan, Bob Watson, Doc Ellis. Whoa, time out. You mean all of these future major leaguers were on your team? Yeah, and Dennis Gilbert. You mean the Dennis Gilbert who just tried to buy the Los Angeles Dodgers, Dennis Gilbert? Yeah. I mean, short white guy. Yeah. So you're an integrated team. Yeah. Wow. And we had this really inspirational coach named Chet Brewer. He was a pitcher in the Negro Leagues. Wow. And he was a father figure to us. He kept us out of trouble. And by the way, our 9-year-old bat boy was Eddie Murray. You mean you mean the greatest switch hitting first baseman of all time? Yeah. He was your bat boy. Yeah. I mean, I'm blown away. And so, right? And you don't even
great.
have to be a baseball fan. And you say, wow, how did I not know this team? But this team, and at the time, I optioned a story and I met a lot of the players. And then I wrote I wrote a screenplay based on this experience that these young men had in this summer of incredible turbulence and
Mhm.
strife, and how baseball was this world that was, that Chet Brewer created this world where he protected these young men and guided them through this difficult time. It's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Right.
so cool. That's so
Yes.
cool. It kind of brings together a lot of elements.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, elements that are still
Yeah.
in,
We're dealing with
yeah,
today.
right. Everything, right? Everything is still there, unfortunately, in many ways. And so, but it's a great story of, of overcoming. And if I had to pitch it to you, it would probably be, remember the Titans with a baseball theme.
Okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
Okay. So it's a great story. And so we've been close. We had money and then it fell through because of COVID. And we've had those setbacks, but it's just part of filmmaking where you have these setbacks and you have to just keep moving forward. And I try to tell people what I learned on my journey of making Chasing 3000 is that you just cannot allow anyone to discourage you.
Right.
And you have to be persistent and you have to have confidence. And you just I always say either someone's going to help me, or they're going to get out of my way. But
Hmm.
that you have to have that point of view. And I was much older. I was 30 when I started, but then 10 years later I was still working on it. So now there's a 40-year-old sitting across the desk. And there were people who would tell me I was too old
Wow.
to my face. And I lived outside of Los Angeles. I lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so, I one of the things I say is that I got on one of my early screenplays, I got coverage from at Disney, and the development person said, "This is a pretty good story. It has some compelling elements, but this guy's from Cincinnati. What does he know?"
Oh, no way.
And what I got at the time was, well, if you're serious, you would move out here.
Mm.
Well, I was serious, but I had a wife, I had children. I just couldn't move. So I had to overcome that. So
Yeah.
what I did is I got an LA cell phone and I used my cousin Matt's address. Hey, I
Yeah.
now live in LA. And a lot of people thought I lived in LA, but I'd say I out illusioned the illusionist. But I overcame that objection. I had to
Right.
overcome that objection, right, to have people listen to me, or not listen to me, but to take me seriously.
Sure. Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to get creative in overcoming objections,
Oh man, you're speaking my
Yeah.
language.
right? You just, because you're going to get and that's just part of life, really.
Hmm.
And whatever you do, sometimes you just get, I mean, I had a producer tell me in real time, you can't do what you think you're doing. And I said, but I'm sitting in your office in Beverly Hills pitching you my stories. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did he
But
say?
but he was flabbergasted. He didn't say anything back to me. But you will get, you know, he can't do this. What? But I am doing it.
It's like a
I'm
little
doing.
intimidation factor there, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
tactic.
Yeah. And just it's just Hollywood. You'll get,
Hmm.
you will get those. You'll get people who give you very good feedback on your script, very
Hmm.
constructive feedback, and then others who just, I'm not sure, and I've learned sometimes they couldn't get it made anyways.
Mhm.
So, if I got certain feedback that didn't feel right to me, this maybe this person and I shouldn't be working together.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
probably a lot of that intuition and whatnot along this process because you probably know and believe what you're doing, and you've got that vision and outlook. But not everybody operates that way, or
Right. And
the
you just have to
necessity
talk.
of their work is just different.
Exactly. And sometimes, quite frankly, I always say often I learned through this process that, meeting certain producers, that they needed me more than I needed them. And,
Mm-hmm.
now with IMDb, you just can, somebody's talking to you, you can look at their credits.
Sure,
At the
sure.
time, I wonder how many credits does this producer really have? Can he or she get this made? But you learn. So I wouldn't get discouraged if somebody, I learned early on that you fail upward in Hollywood. You learn to
Okay.
fail upward. Okay, so everybody who passed on a story, I still made a contact, right? I still
Right.
would make another step. I made a contact. I learned a little something about my story that maybe I didn't know. I learned a little something about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to tell younger people, if you're going to fail, realize that many times in life we're failing upward because we're making progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I have a quick thing. You mentioned at the beginning of the interview that you were also a lawyer.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm just curious, having that in your back pocket, I mean, there always seems to be like the legal stories and, that kind of intrigue around the legal profession as a story, which also then, I mean, are you able to work on multiple scripts at the same time so that you're sort of pitching, a variety of
Well, no,
different
that's
scripts,
actually
or is,
very
or is that
that's
is that
that's
tough to
actually a
do?
very good story and something a very good point. I'm sorry, a
Yeah.
very good point, very good question. And then I try to tell other young writers is that you have to have more than one story because
Okay.
sometimes you'll pitch something. For instance, my relationship with Ryan Johnson started when he was at Mandalay, and I had this movie I wrote, a story, this screenplay called Downward Rush. It's a pretty good action picture, but they passed on it. But when he passed on it, he said, "What else do you have?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, "Well, I have this small baseball story, but you wouldn't be interested in that." And he said, "What are you trying to say, that we don't like baseball? That well, that we're not interested in baseball?" He said, "Send it to us." So I sent it to him, and he really loved it, but it wasn't right for him. But what happened is when Ryan went out, he kept his screenplay, and I touched base with him about 3 years later, and he was the producer who helped me make the movie. And so, yes, to your point, I have three projects I'm working on right now. I have two other projects besides Brewers Boys, and you know, just trying to keep writing. And that's the only thing a writer has in his or her control
Right.
is when I get very frustrated, I just start writing. I just go back to one of my stories, or I'll start outlining a new story. And it's interesting, you sort of take control of your life again
Right.
by that process of writing. That's the only thing you can control. But it's a very long-winded answer. I'm sorry, Mark, but yes,
No, it's
I'm,
great.
I'm working on a number of stories. I think most writers do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm just curious, as you're working on those stories, how I mean, this topic comes up a lot. It's called, climate storytelling, integrating, kind of climate change and like how we're living, like the world we're currently living in, into our stories in various ways. And
Mhm.
I'm just curious how you approach that. Does that ever come up?
Well, well, sure. I think because you have to write stories today that are going to have interest, broad appeal,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think any writer integrates into a story, unless it's a period piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Brewer's Boys was set in 1965. But if you write a story, there are a lot of stories right now that are sort of maybe a little futuristic or talking about the future. And, I think COVID had a great impact on all of
Mm-hmm.
us, on, what's in our future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Political climate is so contentious, and, that it leads us to believe what's going to happen next, and where are we all going?
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that anything you write, especially if you're writing something about a current the world as it currently is,
Yeah.
you have to write about what's happening.
Yeah. Reflecting kind of real
Correct.
life, current events, or, like just the way people live day to day,
Correct.
in your story. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's like, but also people, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. But I also, we love the side of hope and that sort of the positive outlook as well. So I think there still are a tremendous amount of opportunities
Right.
to tell, really great,
Yes.
hopeful, positive, compelling stories.
Yeah, there are. I have another project I'm working on. It's a limited TV series, and it's again, and I think as a writer, I mean, I love sport, I love baseball, I love history, and so there's certain things that stories that just you you gravitate toward.
Yeah.
And the series that I'm working on is called the 442nd American Heroes. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the 442nd,
Mm.
but the 442nd was a unit in World War II comprised entirely of Japanese Americans.
Hmm.
Mm.
And while their families were interned here in the United States illegally, without due process,
Mhm.
um, they volunteered to fight the Nazis in Germany. And the 442nd became the most decorated regiment in the history of our country.
Wow.
21 Medal of Honor winners. 21.
Wow.
And it's a story. Again, I, one of my perspective is we have a lot of stories about heroes out there,
Uh-huh.
but many of them are just fictional heroes. I have always in my life, and my brother, I grew up with a brother who's disabled, and he was a hero of how he lived his life.
Uh-huh.
We have a lot of real life heroes, stories that we just don't know. And that's where I feel my passion. And so again, it's a great story, and it's a feel good story, and it's a story of unbelievable heroism, and not just from one young soldier, but
Mm.
from dozens of young soldiers. And they were remarkable young men.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, yeah, I'm curious, from your perspective, we're similar to that. We're looking for these cool stories out there, these people behind the scenes who are doing great work that we want to, share on this podcast so we can all learn from each other and, spread the word about interesting practices or ways of thinking or whatever the case is. And I'm curious, we're putting together like a playbook of guiding principles, and we focus on sustainability and entertainment or innovation and entertainment. And I'm just curious from your perspective, if you were to, provide us with a guiding principle to include in there, what would be like, one on your list?
Probably number one on my list would be persistence.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
And it makes up for a lack of experience, of a lack of sometimes a lack of talent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talented people that don't succeed, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who will give up right before. I mean, success is just around the corner, and people will give up.
Yeah.
And you just have to you have to move forward. You have
Yeah.
to keep moving. And I think that's that would be my number one principle is keep moving. Do simply if you believe in yourself and as a writer, as a filmmaker, your story, keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy.
No.
Life can beat you down,
Yeah. And there's
right?
so many distractions now, right?
Oh, there is. And even more so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's and Hollywood has always been somewhat of a distracted town. I always say that, that like, you and your screenplay, it's sort of like a beautiful girl. They walk in a room and they tell you how great you are, how beautiful you are, and how badly they want you. And you leave that meeting thinking you're the most beautiful girl in the world. The only problem is half an hour later, another beautiful girl walks in and
There's
they
another,
tell her
yeah.
the same thing. Right. So everyone gets that same kind of approach in Hollywood where they may give you the kiss off, but they don't want to alienate you because you may bring
Mm.
them the next big hit, right?
Uh-huh.
So they, you have to find that, and that's the other part is just disappointment, overcoming,
Yeah.
especially as writers and filmmakers. Just there's not
Yeah.
only is there just frustration, there's just also you have to just overcome
Yeah.
disappointment, but just
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
persisting.
Bill, I have one more question that's sort of been burning in top of mind. What are your thoughts on AI? I mean, I just in terms of Hollywood and production and story writing as a last question, because I'm just curious. This is very top of mind, and some folks are like, no AI. Some folks are like, well, I think I heard somewhere like Ben Affleck is starting to pitch a whole entire AI made movie from start to finish. So I just want to know, yeah, any sort of thoughts on it on the AI?
I am not the most savvy person to be answering this question as far as my knowledge of AI, but just like everything in life, there can be a really good component to it,
Mm-hmm.
but then you have to be very cautious. And my perception of AI is that it might be able to mimic the human element of writing, but I don't believe it has human emotion. And that's what makes the difference is the story, a movie has to move you. And I'm not sure that an AI generated story would have any depth or soul to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not to sound too
Yeah.
deep, but
We'll
No, that makes
we'll find
sense.
out. I mean, it's
well,
it's kind of
that's
a
right.
crazy, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is moving in a direction so fast
Oh, that's crazy.
that
Yeah.
it is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard recently like AI is like working to the mean. If we just want to work to the average, then great. But if we want to, go further, be creative, like, incorporate all of these other elements, like, that requires a human.
But it's a tool.
So
It's a
it's a
tool
tool.
to like
Yeah.
accelerate work or get more ideas or
Correct.
get through
Yeah.
writer's block or
Yeah.
10x a team of some sort that only has 5 people and get them to be doing the work of 50.
I mean, it's
So,
like our smartphones can be our best friends, but boy, they can also be our worst enemies. I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just have to be cautious in in this world. It's just different. I've got grandchildren, and they're on their cell phones a lot. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's different than how
right.
I grew up, and probably how you grew up. But
Yeah,
I think my father
exactly.
would my father would probably have asked me once, and if I didn't come, he would just grab my cell phone and throw it against the wall and smash it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that would have been how
Amazing.
he dealt with me and my cell phone. But that's a whole
Yeah.
other
Well,
story for another time.
sounds like a good story. Sounds like a good story.
Uh-huh.
Bill
Yeah.
Mikita, thank you so much for yeah, enlightening us a little bit about behind the scenes and
Oh,
the life of a screenwriter. How can our listeners find you? If they're, do you have
well,
IMDb? Are
well,
you
thank you.
where?
Yeah, I'm on IMDb, Bill Mikita. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. You can find me on X at Bill/Mikita 21. And so, yeah,
Great.
and I appreciate the time being on your podcast here, and really it meant a lot to me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks. And feel free to drop us a like and subscribe to the tie-in.
I'll do
Yay.
that. I'll do that. Thank you.
All right.
Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Social media is by Picnic Social. Our producer is Colin Miller.